Well, against all odds, a slight tangent has returned. Team OTB PM/FM bring a production meeting of sorts to the air, minus all of the defamation, most of the gossip and some of the swearing. You're very welcome. Mick McCarthy is here. Hello.
Hello, Joe.
We ride again, Mick. Will O'Callaghan, hello.
Happy to be back.
Yeah, I like the way you're kind of saying against all odds this is back, despite the fact we would have tangented away if you hadn't been away for a couple of weeks.
My apologies. Arthur O'D.
How dare you, Joe?
Is in the house. Arthur, hello.
How are you, Joe? That was very smooth.
Too smooth, really. It's not the MO of the slight tangent.
Very smooth.
Will I kick things off with some emails?
Emails.
Some long overdue emails, apologies. There has been a bit of a break. A slight tangent at offtheball.com is where you can get us. A lovely quality of email, I would say, coming in the main. So first email, no particular order, is from a Joey and starts by saying, to Joe and team, which is, of course, the correct opening to these emails.
What's
Joey
become of the
a baby
tangenteers here?
Joey is a baby kangaroo, yeah.
Yeah. I just thought.
What has that got to do with anything?
We said, Joey. To be fair.
All-time low. Yeah, Joey is baby kangaroo.
Proceed.
Matt Williams always calls me Joey. I have to say, I really like it.
He thinks of you as a baby kangaroo.
And he'll
Certainly
call
as a youngster, anyway.
Rob Kearney Robbie.
I think
It's a bit like the Manchester United dressing room. Everything ends with a Y, and he makes it work.
Keeney really didn't work, did it?
That's an English thing, whereas in Ireland we tend to end with O.
I was here, Dave. Yeah, Keeney, come in, dressing room. It's like Keeney.
Yeah.
And has Rob Kearney ever pulled him up and called him Robbie Kearney?
No, because when Matt does it, there's such charisma at play. It's lovely. No one else calls me Joey, but I mean, rock on, Matt is all I have to say.
As of tonight, yeah.
Yeah. Really glad a slight tangent has continued. It's excellent, says Joey. I've tried to change my phone. Oh, we won't dwell on this. This was overdone the last time. My apologies.
Probably because it's been abandoned.
Yeah. Well, sorry, I can talk about that if you want. I've tried to change my phone routine since the new year, but I haven't gone as extreme as getting a brick phone like Joe. Deleted all apps from my phone except WhatsApp, my bank and Spotify. It's been great. I'm sleeping better, no scrolling, and after a few days at the start of always picking up my phone. I now go hours without looking at it, but I still have access to my money and podcasts. It also leads to an old school way of hearing news. I had no idea João Felix had joined Chelsea until the news round. It was an odd experience these days. My question is about long throw-ins.
Naturally.
That was a tangent. So often we see the centre-back put the ball, or centre-back thrown up front, and either no cross is swung in or it's lumped 60 yards forward to them in hope. A long throw actually gives them a chance, as much chance as a corner kick or free kick, and it keeps the pressure on without having to recycle the ball from side to side after a quick throw. Is it just deemed unfashionable in a time when every team wants to play perfect passing football? I say, let the chaos begin. Launch it in there. Keep up the excellent work. I would agree with him. I think it's a very effective tactic, and it is deemed unfashionable and beneath managers, and so it's not really used. But I mean, as Arsenal knew for a long time on their visits to Stoke, it's hard to defend against chaos.
Liverpool have, or certainly had, a throw-in coach specialist, though, didn't they?
Yeah.
So there must be, you think, some argument against it just throwing it in simply to keep it. That there's obviously I don't know either why it doesn't. Obviously Ireland do it, and the women's team do it with Megan Campbell.
The email did mention that, actually.
And it launches right in it, and same obviously back to Rory Delap. But there must be something more than it just being unfashionable. People saw how effective it was, like with Pulis and Stoke.
Because the throw-in, I think, is mainly seen as a restart and an ability to keep possession, and has to be done right. Like, my biggest criticism of Ireland for years was that they didn't know how to take a throw-in. Ireland would get a throw, it would be a disaster situation. It would be closed down, it would take a minute, and they'd just hoof it up the line, we'd lose possession. So it's obviously more important than just like an opportunity for a cross. It also needs to be done right. You know, like, I mean, I know I do this too much, but to bring it back to
RTE.
Villa.
Sorry.
The other thing I do. But Stephen Gerrard, in his managerial wisdom, decided that long throws were a way forward for Villa, but they didn't have anybody to do it. So, like, Matty Cash was brought in, but he couldn't throw the ball far. Okay. And it was a real problem. They went on for months. He was going over to the left-hand side. It would take 5 minutes for Villa to take a throw as Matty Cash made it over from right back to the left wing position to take a throw in that would hit the first man. So there is a lot of that. But I do agree with you about the unfashionable thing. That is where I think that, like, that question is interesting to me, because I think we make football, whatever the fashionable thing is the only way to play at any given time. And it's like, a long throw is, if it's incredible, if you have somebody to do it, then it's incredibly useful. And why not do it just because you think it's agricultural or whatever?
I do wonder if increasingly you'd find a dressing room of players very much with their arms crossed saying, that's our tactic.
Well, again, you probably don't want it to be your only tactic.
It's true.
Well, I wonder how many top teams actually have someone who has the weapon of a very long throw, though, and aren't actually making use of them.
I don't know, but that's the key question. Rory Delap's don't grow on trees.
Who was the original long throw merchant before Rory Delap?
Gary Neville could launch one. You wouldn't say he was the original.
There was a specific guy, he had a towel controversy and everything. It was whether he was allowed to dry the balls. Jason Kumas.
Yeah.
Remember him? He used to play he was a Welsh player. He played for, I think it was Tranmere when they went on cup runs. But there was a big thing. He was like the Rory Delap of his day. There was a big thing. But Mick McCarthy was the answer I was looking for. Mick McCarthy used to launch a long throw in. Ronnie Whelan's volley came from Mick McCarthy's long throw.
Chaos is chaos. I mean, there will still always be a place in GA for a long ball into full forward who, even if he doesn't win it clean, just creates that bit of anarchy.
I always enjoy the clubs that actually facilitated a long thrower as well, where they would move the hoardings back ever so slightly, or maybe bring the line a little bit forward. And even particularly around Rory Delap, Stoke had it down to an art form where there was always a ball boy with the towel very close to where the ball would go to play. And like a long throw, as unfashionable as it might be, if you've got someone with the skill, you can actually launch the ball in at a much better angle than you can from a corner. You can be far more effective. In the FA Cup a few weeks ago, there was a team doing it, and again, everyone had to drop back into the box. It's very, very difficult to actually defend.
Miserable to defend against.
Megan Campbell ones against Scotland that night. I know she does it more often than that, but those ones were the most unplayable ones I've ever seen. The angle was incredible.
We'll push on. Jack McGrath wondered when the inevitable Kenny Cunningham slight tangent crossover is happening. We've had that request several times over. We will make it happen. How it has to happen is we don't tell Kenny in advance we're doing it, because he'll say, no way, no way. But if he finds himself in it, he'll be the greatest tangenteer of all. So Fergal wonders, am I the only one who think this is about GAA? What if there was no GAA? Who wonders what if players could choose different paths? It's hard not to think Hugo Keenan wouldn't be an exceptional full forward, or Conor Callahan an exceptional full back. Caelan Doris playing for Mayo, Aidan O'Shea lining out for Ireland rugby team. Louise Galvin, Lindsay Peate, Hannah Tyrrell have all done it. Is David Clifford Johnny Sexton's long-term replacement? I personally would love to see Bundy Aki line it for Galway. What a full forward line that would be. Walsh, Comer, Aki. Basically, I want the toughest trade taken one step further. Cheers, Fergal.
I like the toughest trade.
It's a nice idea.
Good show. Just as an aside.
Aidan O'Shea is always the guy. He was on that show.
Yeah.
Why is he always included in these things?
Because he's so physically gifted. I mean, he's Caelan Doris, isn't he?
Yeah.
I did pose the question on Monday Night Rugby if Caelan Doris hadn't gone to Blackrock, if he'd stayed in Ballina, County Mayo, place close to my own heart, would we know his name?
Maybe not as a rugby player, but
he might have been a good Gaelic footballer, though.
Yeah, probably.
You see, when they did the toughest trade, I think they deliberately went to look for some of the most blessed athletic GA players that were available to them. So Aidan O'Shea, Lee Chin and Michael Murphy. Yeah. Where in theory, all of them seem really well set to play another sport. Yeah. And even when Michael Murphy was over at Clermont Auvergne, they were very happy with the way that he was testing on a lot of the physical stuff, but just his rugby knowledge just wasn't there. In Lee Chin's case, I think he struggled to skate was his biggest problem. And Aidan O'Shea actually did quite well in the combine bits. So essentially he went to a mini NFL draft and they ran him through some of the different bits of the combine. And his jumping stats were good, his running stats were good. It's just he again lacked that immersion within the sport.
Oh yeah, I don't think anyone, even Fergal, is contemplating a switch this late in their career. He's more saying if they had gone to the GAA field that day instead of rugby, what might have been. Same point with Doris.
Would have been weird for Bundy Aki to do that.
Yeah. Would have, all right, yeah.
Would you really want Hugo Keenan at full forward, though? Sure, you want Hugo Keenan at wing back?
Yeah, I would have thought wing back.
And why is Conor Callahan going to full back in rugby?
Don't know.
now you're really confusing things.
No, I thought the same thing reading.
Bit of a centre, I'd say.
I would have thought so too.
Yeah.
It was always very striking when David Clifford talks about playing football, and I remember interviewing him thinking, oh yeah, how many would you score in a season? He was like, no, I was a really average centre half in football.
That's been that, yeah. You would have, yeah, it's funny. That's strange. Normally people are good across the board at what they do.
Yeah.
But maybe he just played Gaelic football all the time, always number one, and just sort of threw his hand a little bit of football.
When I was over at the Olympics in 2012, I came across Martin Johnson playing five-a-side Astro.
Yeah.
Didn't quite translate.
Not quite the ball player that David Clifford is, though. You know, I would kind of like more of a athlete, I would
He was
say.
pointing with authority.
I'd say he was, yeah. Good leader no matter what sport you're playing.
Last email. Keep them coming in, by the way. It is nice to get them, and they often bail us out when we haven't thought of things to talk about. But we do have lots to talk about this evening. Hey, lads, this might be a bit too deep for the segment. No, give us the depth. We want the depth. But it could be a good platform for it too. My two favourite segments are this one and Sunday Paper Review, mainly because guests tend to speak off the cuff on various subjects. So this is the man who doesn't want preparation.
Another common link there.
No.
It's email from a J. Malloy.
I hadn't spotted that. So he mentioned a recent Sunday Paper Review, Dion and Tommy. They were talking about Roy Keane, and this was on the back of the Tommy Tiernan interview and Roy not quite opening up. And the lads were reflecting on that and talking about his decision to stop drinking and the way we talked about it. And he said, you seem to suggest it would be interesting and would open the door to a deeper Roy Keane if they knew why he'd stopped drinking. I've skin in the game here because I had to stop drinking in 2018. I was a full-blown addict. I played junior football, and to this day I haven't told my teammates I don't drink anymore for fear of judgment. I make the usual excuses. I'm driving. I want to go to the gym in the morning, not feeling well, etc. I feel like the culture of addressing mental health and depression has changed in Ireland for the better, but not drinking is still a weird taboo. What's wrong with your man? As I sit with the Lucasade, has been said to me countless times. You've interviewed dozens of athletes on the topic of addiction, and for all that I applaud you. But to the ordinary man in his 30s playing amateur sport, whether it be GAA or soccer in Ireland, it is still weirdly almost frowned upon. Thoughts? Cheers, Brian. P.S. I listened to a slight tangent on the way home from AA meetings, so if this got read out, I would laugh. Addicts have a sense of humour too, you know. I had thought this had really changed. The days of going out not drinking, I had thought were now. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, I would have thought so too. All right, yeah, I suppose you just didn't. More so, I probably would have thought you just probably wouldn't go and do it or put yourself in positions where you'll be expected to drink, say.
But if you were out, quiet pint or two or three, that territory, not a big night out.
Yeah.
And one person at the table was either drinking a non-alcoholic beer or was just having a Coke. I'd be surprised if in this day and age there was a, what are you doing? What are you not drinking? I feel like that day's gone, no?
Do you not think that you'd ask? I feel if there was, say, 3 people and one wasn't drinking.
Might depend how well you knew them. If they drank every other time the previous 20 times you were out, then you maybe might ask.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
If you just realised he never drinks, I think
I think you'd probably get used to it, yeah.
It's not that strange, is it? Now, this is
his lived experience, though, as well. You know,
Brian's
I think
lived experience,
there's different. I suppose there's different groups and there's different people that you'll drink with, and maybe there is a little bit of that. Like, I've definitely seen it.
Sure. I
kind of agree with you that it might be on its way out, and it's less, in my experience, that I've seen it than previously. But I mean, growing up, like, you know, from the time you were drinking in pubs, like, it was a regular thing that people were hounded about why they weren't drinking. You know, I was like, what are you doing? What are you drinking that for? You know what I mean? It's like, just like, even do it a few nights yourself. Do you know, when you're just like, you know, you maybe didn't have any money in college or whatever, just wanted a break or whatever, and you'd be drinking like a Ribena or something like that. Jesus, the questions, like.
Yeah.
Like you were some sort of weirdo.
It would become a talking point, I'll give you that. Maybe that's youth.
I think that's probably gone now.
Your 30s, if anyone's at that crack.
No, it's true, yeah.
Jeez, I never heard that now. I never heard that happening.
Really?
You know, in your early 20s, you'd need a good explanation, I think.
God.
It's just peer pressure, you know?
Yeah.
I can understand that perception from the email writer as well, because maybe they were that person 10 years ago where they would have wondered why one of their mates, especially if they're playing junior football, you're all back to the pub afterwards. Why is that guy not having a drink? Why is this guy the designated driver every week? What's going on? And maybe he feels in his head that he's going to be questioned, even if those questions are unlikely to actually happen.
I could more understand if Brian felt, it'd be interesting to get your thoughts, Brian, if Brian felt there's still a taboo about addiction as opposed to mental health now, which is so openly discussed and there's such an awareness of it. But I think, would you be shyer about saying, oh no, I was an addict?
Yeah, I think
is there a heaviness to that word, addict?
That's probably a bit different. Yeah, you would probably be a bit more conscious.
Certainly invites questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it also might be, maybe you don't want to talk about that, and even just a mild-mannered, good-natured question on, I won't know, do you not drink? Or, you know, invites that entire conversation, or the need, as he points out, to hide it with a lie of some kind, or even like, you know, a soft lie about driving or whatever. So I'd imagine even if there's nobody needling at you or having a go at you or even being in any way inappropriate, that still becomes a pressure on somebody.
And it's a big topic to casually get into routinely.
Oh yeah, especially like, that's what I'm saying. It's like, you're not talking about like always here your best mates. You're playing a bit of junior ball.
Yeah.
It's with kind of casual acquaintances that you're kind of getting to know in some ways. Even if you've been playing with them for years, you sort of do. You play a bit, play a few matches, you do a bit of training, you might go out and socialise with them every now and then. You don't know them all that well, and then it's a big change of night discussion, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very personal. And really, like, it's something so to be celebrated.
Oh yeah.
You know?
I actually don't think, that's the funny thing. I think once you got past that part, I find that's where I think we definitely have changed. I don't think there's a huge amount, look, I could be wrong, I don't know, but I would imagine that there isn't a huge amount of blowback to that kind of revelation. You know, or pressure or anything. No, of course not, but I don't think anybody would be anything but supportive, you know?
Yeah.
Is there a lot, do you guys find that there's a lot of, that there's still a lot of drink associated with playing sport in Ireland? At a lower level, that it's a part of it. You play sport, there's a part of that that's almost an expectation that drink is a part of it, even if it's not drinking, even if it's the ban.
Yeah.
And then the going mad. I remember there was a judge in Galway a few years ago who made a big point of like talking about GAA drink bans and saying like every September the place goes absolutely mad because everybody's off the leash almost, you know.
It almost like fetishized drink.
It really does.
Ban.
Yeah.
And then that leads to the idea definitely within GA of, they didn't get home till 5 o'clock on the Monday after they won the county final, or the Monday club stretched into the end of the week because of that. Because these guys are denied this for a prolonged period of time. And whatever about inter-county, I always think it's bizarre when club teams have drink bans.
Yeah. I suppose it does make to the extent that drink runs through every aspect of society.
Yeah.
Like everything. A christening, let's all go get drunk, you know? And certainly, like, even so much talk around the rugby is how much people go to get drinks during the game and to what extent it's affecting the atmosphere. And, it's a lunchtime kick-off, people won't have had a few pints, so the atmosphere won't be as good. Like, we casually refer to it almost at every pit stop.
I've seen it a lot at matches, actually, whatever about playing sport, where it's like the centrepiece of what you've come for becomes less important. And it's like I've seen people leave games early because they've wanted to go back to the pub.
Yeah.
You know, and games that were in the melting pot, and that's why we're there.
It's funny, Jerry Thornley...
not always great, but, like, it's true.
Jerry Thornley made the point that, like, a lot of people got out of the Aviva early, you know, race to the pub, as opposed to let's applaud the lap of honour. Yeah, I mean...
Thinking about the queues.
Isn't there received kind of wisdom, anecdotal or otherwise, that the younger generation aren't drinking as much as we did? That for the first time it's turning? And I think the point has also been made that drug use might be up in its place.
Ideal.
I don't think you're going to get rid of it, vice completely, like.
It is a bit weird, though, how drink culture is still permeating throughout society, though. I was even thinking last week where I was meeting a mate of mine around 4:30, and the coffee shops in Dublin were pretty much exclusively closed at that point. It seems really weird that the pub becomes one of the only places that you can actually go as a casual meeting spot.
Yeah.
Which is very different culturally to, say, if you're somewhere elsewhere in Europe, where there are other spaces that you can go to rather than the pub. We still gravitate naturally towards the pub all the time.
It's so funny you say that. Actually, me and Fionn went to get a coffee at 5:30, and we tried 3 places before. 5:30 in Dublin before you get a coffee. I appreciate it's quite late maybe to get a coffee, but I remember a couple of years ago, and when you're talking about spaces, a couple of years ago, I don't know why, I was on my own, and I'd work the next day, and I just wanted to get out of the apartment almost, so I hopped on my motorbike, went to town, buzzing around. I was thinking, where'll I go? It's funny, you know, zip in the Temple Bar, Keys area. It was pretty grim, kind of 11 p.m. territory, and I thought, where do I get a coffee? And I remember that the Starbucks on Stephen's Green was 24-hour, or certainly open very, very late. And so I thought, I'll park there and pitch it there and go in and read a book or something. And it was awash with, I would say, you know, brown faces of the, you know, Muslim faith would be my guess. So and it was packed. And it was so lovely. Everyone sitting there was chatting. Clearly nobody had a drink taken, nobody was drunk. And it was like such an odd atmosphere for 11 p.m. onto midnight on a Saturday evening. And I do remember thinking, my God, we have this all wrong.
Yeah. And that's actually when I was in the Middle East, actually, years and years ago on a holiday. I was just in Dubai, and that's what, like, Starbucks at night time is. That's the socialising place. That's where people go. You know what I mean? I know it's a different thing.
Yeah, but it's the same thing. But and like with no hint of antisocial behaviour, no air of anything in the air. Whereas honestly, 2 kilometres down the road, be careful where you're walking.
The point on what else is there to do is so. I was saying that to you earlier. Like, I mean, not really so much now, but when we did the shift a long time, Joe, and a long time ago, and I was in my 20s, and by the time, like single, and like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. By Thursday you'd want to go for a pint. You want to do something, because what else were you going to do after work? You weren't like, you didn't have to be up the next morning. We were working basically 2 to 10 on this shift. And that was because the amount of days like Tuesday and Wednesday is like, I don't feel like going home. What will I do? And like, you couldn't go to the cinema. You can't go for a coffee, as you said, and maybe sit down and read a book. There's nothing you can do in this city, and therefore the rest of the country, obviously, outside of going to the pub at night time.
Restaurant,
so people work, going to a restaurant at 10 o'clock at night, there's not many places you go during the week that'll sit you at that time, you know what I mean? And even then, like, that's something, that isn't ideal. But there are people who work outside, like, we're not the only ones who work outside at 9 to 5. And it's a pretty big city, Dublin. You know what I mean? Even by international standards, like, you're talking like, we're coming up on like a 2 million population, and there is nothing to do other than go drinking.
I guess you could go to the pub and not drink.
Fine, but that's it's the culture I'm talking about. Yeah. It's like, it's drink first. I don't have to drink when I'm there, but
so that's where I'm going. In other cities, are they what? They're starting. They have the tapas out in Madrid at 11:30, midnight. That kind of a culture. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you can do everything all night in all these places. You go to the cinema in New York at 2 o'clock in the morning. You know what I mean? I'm not sure there's a market for it here, but
like London especially is
very taxi driver.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I don't mean.
What are you watching?
I mean, current New York, Arthur, not the seedy 1970s.
He was single, he said.
Like, London's a 24/7 city. I appreciate it's a lot bigger than Dublin, but still, like, there's transport all night. There's things to do in London all the time that you don't necessarily have within Dublin. And European cultures, I think things go quite a bit later. Like, if Spain is the example, everything happens much later in Spain. Nightclubs don't close till 4 or 5 a.m.
I won't disagree on the option point at all. But having said that, the thought of going for that Thursday night pint, Jesus, that's nice too. Like, it's not.
No, I don't think
all evil.
Don't ban all pubs.
Yeah,
I'd still go for that Thursday night.
That sounds lovely. Why don't we do that?
That's a fair point. You're not here.
It's a lot harder, but it's a lot harder to find. Contrarily, but like a lot harder to find a pub in those countries.
Okay.
Like, much more difficult. Yeah. Especially if you're walking through, like, we go to Italy like a fair bit, love going there, but it's like, and so you can find a great place to go get a coffee or gelato or whatever else late at night. Yeah. But God help you if you're just looking to sit inside a pub and just get a drink.
So, like, there is something lovely about that culture as well.
Does that come down to climate? Am I mad to think that it's like, it's just a different thing, that it's hotter during the day, like, and I don't know, maybe that's kind of too simplistic, because as you're saying, London, and I remember even I used to live off Edgware Road, which obviously in the last while is kind of, it's all kind of shisha bars and different Middle Eastern restaurants and stuff. So it's completely that, as you see outside Starbucks, but just the whole way up. And it's incredible, like, it's just so different. No pub on the road at all. And it used to be completely different, the opposite. It used to be full of Irish pubs and stuff, didn't it? All gone now.
Yeah. I'm sure climate does have something to do with it, It affects so much. Why do things start off in a certain trajectory? We had to take a break. That was just the emails. That was more than a tangent. There are some texts in just to sign off for a moment. On was a Tranmere player, but it wasn't Kumas.
No, I got that arseface.
So do you know who it was?
Dave Challoner.
Okay.
But I did have to look it up. I didn't remember his name. But
Eamon in Kildare knew.
Yeah.
Lads, Dave Challoner is the Tranmere player who could throw the ball really far.
I think Kumas was their good player and Dave Challoner was their gimmick player. And then that was Tranmere, who kept making cup finals.
So much for giving some sort of props to the throw-ins. The gimmick.
Oh, do you know what else Dave Challoner did? He was like a left back who could throw the ball far.
Let's get him on the show some night.
He was so famous that I thought he was Jason Kumas.
And Brian in Waterford on the long throw in point. Gary Stevens had an effective long throw for Everton and England in the 80s. Thank you, Brian. Any texts in, get them in 53106 on the drink conversation or more besides. We will get back to sport. Sorry, we went off it slightly there. Thanks for the email, Brian. I hope this does give you a laugh on the way home. myself, Mick, Arthur, and Will here. Spurs are 1-0 down, by the way. It's 0-0 in Paris between Bayern and PSG. Pep Guardiola has caught our attention this week for obvious reasons. So came out today, apologised to Steven Gerrard. I don't know if we have the audio, Pete, do we? We do, okay, so here we go. I mean, this was at the start of the press conference in advance of tomorrow's game, so here's a bit of Pep coming at you.
I apologise to Steven Gerrard for my unnecessary and stupid comments I said the last time about him. He knows how I admire him and his career, what he has done for this country that I am living in training session. I am training, I am ashamed of myself, what I said, because he doesn't deserve it. I truly believe my comments, what I said in my previous conference about I defend my club, but I didn't represent my club well, putting his name in this stupid comment. So I apologize. I said to him personally, but like I comment publicly, I have to do it here as well. So I'm so sorry for him, from Alex, his wife, kids, family, because it was stupid.
I think Pep's in for a fairly intense few months somehow.
Yeah.
This is where he is at day 8.
Seemed pretty shook.
Yeah.
Seemed a little bit shook.
I thought he was sincere when he said I'm ashamed of myself.
I think so too.
Like I've strayed into something a bit nasty. Why did I do that kind of thing?
It struck me when he said it initially, made the comment first, that I was like, that's a bit odd. That's not even your fight. And you're not... There's that weird thing though with Guardiola and that whole era that you kind of... It's almost like a second mark when he comes in, because it's sort of like what the evolution to what they wanted from get-go was what he symbolises.
Yeah.
And then a little bit before is a little bit of a preamble. I don't think anyone takes that city and this city the exact same in terms of what they've done.
Part 1 is not a dynasty.
No, this one's taken it to the next level. So I think he feels a kind of ownership for the whole thing. And I presume that's what was kind of sold to him. But it doesn't... that was weird, and it was kind of unbecoming to kind of say it initially. Just... there's no gain in that, like, you know. And I presume that's reflective. I'm not following how it's going kind of online, but I presume that's reflective of a lot of things. Obviously, there was a lot of people, like, I suppose, Lucas Leiva, Jose Enrique and stuff, tweeting afterwards about get their medal, and I suppose it probably all gets tied up into that. But I think he probably on reflection was a bit embarrassed that he'd gone down that route and wanted to bring it back, because he lives with these people in whatever small little global thing, you know, they have, that it's like he'll have to encounter that. That's, you know, it's just not really... It's not great. I know I heard you on the news round, mixed different thoughts on it though.
Well, I took it to be very sincere, and Mick, we'll come to you in a second.
Don't bother.
I think Pep is particularly defensive, and we've spoken a few times about the fact that Man City built the infrastructure around him by bringing in Shiki Bergestein and bringing in Serrano as their CEO. So therefore, the defence that he was making on Friday was, you have accused my people of wrongdoing, so therefore I'm going to defend my people. I wonder how aware Pep was about the conversation around his comments that he made before, when he said, if I find out that City have lied to me, I'll walk out tomorrow. And then obviously to double down a little bit that on Friday and say, I'm more determined than ever, I'm going to stay here and we're going to prove you wrong, and this is our backs against the wall. I'm not sure Man City, bankrolled in the way that they are, sit very well as an underdog. I think that's probably rubbed a lot of people up the wrong way. And then the embargoed comments came out about Steven Gerrard, which were just like totally off a cliff. He'd gone way too far. To comment about something that happened even before he was in charge. In a weird way, you'd expect that of Pep's former nemesis in Mourinho to bring up something like this slip. But the fact that Pep had no control over that whatsoever, that's before he even came to the club, felt totally unnecessary and nasty. But we have seen this from Pep Guardiola from time to time before.
Exactly. Look, I mean, Arthur makes a good point about his contrition there, and maybe that's the case, and maybe I said in the news round that I thought he was attention seeking. You know, maybe not, but the idea that the Gerrard thing is some sort of out of character thing from Guardiola, he goes up at that press conference, he's liable to say anything. You know, he just goes on the attack all the time. This is not the first time he said something like this, and maybe it was just one of the weirder ones, and it jarred a little bit. Yeah. Because, you know, what the hell has Gerrard got to do with anything in this scenario? But I think Pep is very like that. I really do. I don't think there's anything strange about that at all. And I remember thinking that's a weird comment, but not thinking, God, Pep's really let himself down here. I just felt it was par for the course with him.
What else has he said?
I knew you were going to ask me that. It's a very fair question. But I actually don't have an example, but I just know, I've just heard that tone before where he's just sarcastic and choppy. about really legitimate questions, and he gets kind of like, well, what are we supposed to do? You know, everybody thinks that we're doing this, and that's fine, I don't mind, that's fine. And I'm paraphrasing an imaginary conversation here, but I think people know what I'm talking about. I do think people know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's not, I don't have an exact example of
2011 Champions League ahead of the first leg against Real Madrid stands out. Happened in a different language, but Pep got incredibly sarky towards the media ahead of that game. And
he'd been baited there, hadn't he?
Yeah, well, like Mourinho was obviously digging away at him all the time. But Pep, again, got very personal about Real Madrid, got very personal about the Real Madrid squad. This is not beyond him to do this. And there's been so many times he's had moments with the media in England. And I wonder, was it just English journalists and maybe the way they were framing their questions to him, that sometimes he would be incredibly short with them on a Friday. Pep does this when the pressure comes on to Pep Guardiola. He does. He's remarkably charming, and I remember Aguero's last game and we could never replace him and there's all these nice moments. But when Pep Guardiola feels the pressure, that sarcastic and slightly bitey side to Guardiola comes out. Happens to Jurgen Klopp as well. This isn't just a personal thing.
No, I accept that, but I just thought, well, kudos for a sincere apology.
Possibly, yeah, no, that's fair enough. I don't have much time for Daniel Levy, but like he had a cut at him that was absolutely outrageous at the weekend. Yeah. You know what I mean? He basically said that this is all a conspiracy of people who don't like where we are, and Daniel Levy and the like. You know, that's again, I'm paraphrasing. No, but I mean, it's like, this is a conversation that we're having. I don't have the exact notes in front of me.
But he lumped
Levy into this like conspiracy that he has. But this is again, this is like a dig at Levy. When Pep Guardiola knows whether Manchester City are innocent or not, he knows that this.
Just stopping now, Lord Panic is listening. Proceed with caution.
Whether Manchester City are innocent or not of these charges that have been levelled at them, over 100 charges by the Premier League, he knows that they are coming from at least a place where they are legitimate charges that still have to be proven. Okay, so he is now launched into this attack as the poor me. If they ever did anything wrong, I will leave, but I defend my club, and everybody is the villain except me and us in this scenario. He knows that there's something to this, that these questions at least have to be answered. And Manchester City, we know, have not been answered them. They've been, in fact, blocking. And this is why it's taken 4 years, because they weren't forthcoming. So these are just things we know. These are things we are even allowed say at the moment, you know. And the idea that Pep can be on his high horse the way he has been for the last few weeks, I just feel like we haven't had an honest conversation about Pep Guardiola for a long, long time, because he has that little bit of charm about him. But like, he's also done, like, you know, Pep Guardiola has taken the soup at every opportunity. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
no, it's true. You're right, it's true, yeah.
What's interesting, though, is how I suppose people like that can be blinded by what's things. So you think back maybe to the Dalglish Liverpool Suarez situation, where again, it's like very clearly there's something to be answered and they go for it. There's plenty of instances with Ferguson as well where he probably put certainly club interest, if not personal interest, ahead of maybe decency. I don't think that's that. I don't think you could level that against him as unique. And similarly, I don't think you'd level it against him that being snippy with things is unique for someone facing pressure. I mean, that's, as yours kind of, I think it was with Gavin last week, like, Ferguson would routinely ban whoever he could if he felt the need to. Like, very good journalists, someone like Daniel Taylor, banned, you get out, I don't like what you're saying. So that's not, you know, that's one way not to have to be snippy with him. It's not having there every day.
Yes. Manchester United to Qatar is amazing prospect.
Define amazing there, Joe.
Qatar to Manchester United even.
Just the most famous club in the world, the biggest club in the world, in no real need of finance. You know, one of the few clubs that can generate the billion that they spent in transfer fees and give the Glazers a ton of money and various other things. They don't. This is not transformative money because they are the biggest club in the world. That even they are up for grabs here, and the stench that will now hang over, quote unquote, the greatest club in the world, most fabled club in the world, whatever way you want to put it, going forward would just be so grim for the game.
What I find interesting,
all future achievements, and that this, you know, will go through, and there's multi-club ownership, and Philippe Auclair talked to us about that the other night. I mean, like, whatever the rules and regulations, but just, you know, it's the perfect Glazer sign-off. This is what we've done. We've made an absolute shit show of this thing. And now the cherry on top is we're giving you over. You're now owned by Qatar. Good luck. See you in Tampa.
Now, allow the commenters on YouTube and the texters to come in on this, because I wonder if Manchester United fans find this more palatable now than they would have previously, because that they know they're up against nation states and people like Todd Bowley who are willing to throw money at teams to be successful within the Premier League. Is there a certain element that there might be fans who would go, I don't particularly want to be owned by Qatar, but maybe you have to join them to try and beat the teams around them? When you look particularly what's happening across the city at Man
But
City.
United don't in the era of financial fair play. They can spend more than enough to compete.
And also do up Old Trafford. Like, is there an option that's not the Glazers? Does Jim Radcliffe come in and have enough of a transformation to keep them competitive, say?
Yeah, I would think so.
So he's more palatable than Qatar then?
I think. I mean,
Up by miles,
the list of things more palatable than Qatar is lengthy, yeah.
This is where whataboutery has got us, I think, over the last few years. Like, because there's even like this idea that like private investment that's always been there, but football has grown as an industry massively. So obviously that private investment is going to get bigger and is going to get, and then naturally it's always going to be shady and there's always going to be questions to it. But it's like, so people are always like, where's the line? Where do we draw the line? Well, we draw the line simply at nation states, you know. So it's
with
like,
dodgy human rights records.
I think,
in particular.
well, absolutely, yeah, for sure. But I mean, I don't think any other state is going to be buying football teams.
Dictatorships tend to be in the lead.
Yes, exactly. Because I mean, can you imagine us trying to justify spending
It's cost
taxpayer
effective.
money?
You won't
on
believe the
Manchester City?
tourism bounce that we'll get from this.
What a perspective, what a, potentially could happen here. We're looking at the TV at the moment. Right now, they own Mbappe, Neymar and Messi, effectively because they're already at PSG. And then to own one of the biggest clubs legitimately in the world, which is very different to the project that many of the nation states have taken on. They've taken over clubs that have potential, or you can be a hero for making them successful.
Yeah.
Manchester United still already have all that heritage. They've got the history of Old Trafford. You come in, you're probably doing Old Trafford up as opposed to looking at a new stadium within Manchester. You want to keep all that history there. And you can't own many of the other big clubs around Europe. Like, you cannot own Barcelona, Real Madrid or Bayern Munich. Manchester United is the biggest club that Qatar could potentially buy.
Yeah.
And they still own their plaything in Paris at the same time.
Well, any Manchester United fans who are thinking, oh, well, screw everything, winning's all that's important, and how can we keep up with other clubs unless we're owned by this kind of money? I mean, be very careful what you wish for, because that first league title that you win under Qatari ownership, that would be sullied in such a massive way, and everything thereafter won't feel as good.
I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
Not from Leicester, just from a general perspective, I don't think it'll matter. I think what Man United have, and Will's touched on there, that City didn't have, is already a established history of success. That if it continues on under certain different guys, people will obviously talk about it more, but I don't think it's never going to be as glaring as it was at Newcastle or I think. I don't think so.
Whatever's left of the Manchester United fan whatever's left of the Man United fan in my youth.
Why would that
I would still watch them a lot.
Why?
And support them.
No. But why would that not have been the case? Like with previous ownership, like
Glazers.
Yeah,
I could kind of get my head around they were just money men looking after their own interests. But
so if they sell the club to someone else, like the club still is at the root of this, has no control.
Yeah.
And this is something I'm not even just saying it from my United perspective, which obviously I have a slight bias towards, but even from a Newcastle perspective, and there's a difference between celebrating it and dealing with it. But I'm still torn on that fact that you can't expect people to abandon their club just because two other people or two other groups decide it has to change hands. It's not. There's something wrong about that.
The issue is with football and the way it's completely lacked any regulation. I don't like it's the fans are put in an invidious position. But again, as the guy that has a residual love for Manchester United, I would just be like, ugh, grim.
As someone,
grim. What are they going to do on the weekend each season where the Rainbow campaign is out in force? What are they going to do about players? I mean, none openly in the male team. I don't know about the female team top of my head, but openly gay players in their ranks. How do they justify any of this? It's like it's a grotesque route for the club to go down. Like any notions of Manchester United DNA and the Manchester United way, which are dubious anyway with the Glazers, and it's all just marketing. But strip all that back if Qatar own the thing.
But there's no control.
I understand that. That's what I mean. Like it's up to the Glazers. The fate of the next 20 years is in the Glazers' hands.
They're not custodians of that aspect of the club, of their historical.
I know. Like the regulation is the problem. I understand. Like the way that we've got here is such a pity.
See how it goes, though, because, I mean, with the new British government white paper that may or may not ever be published, there is a chance that fans will have some sort of approving. I don't know how much teeth there'll be in that, but it'll be interesting to see then if Manchester United fans approve this as a winning means the most. Would you have the same attitude then?
I don't know enough about that. I don't know who'd be involved in that. Who would be the groups?
Yeah.
Who'd be voting? Who would it be?
Maybe season ticket holders, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I would think the Qataris would have a fairly soft touch and all that stuff, Joe, if they went in. Like similarly to Newcastle now with Saudi Arabia. Like, did the Saudi owners stop Newcastle from taking part in any of the Rainbow Laces and all that kind of stuff last year?
No, but
they surely would go in and just
completely undermines it.
Yeah, it's a certain amount of moral relativism, though, isn't it? Where they would go in and abide by the English rules and the Premier League rules, and the excitement for them is the potential for the team being successful.
I think it makes a mockery of the whole thing. Here we are with our Rainbow's Laces, but we're owned by Qatar.
But sure, the whole thing from FIFA down. Same thing today, like whatever it was about. I saw Adam Crafton in The Athletic tweeting about it. How, like, yesterday, and I forget the name of that player from Czech Republic, is it, who announced that he was gay publicly, and full support from FIFA. The very next day, FIFA announced the Club World Cup's going to Saudi Arabia. So it's like it's not. This isn't a Man United problem. It's not a Man City problem. It's not anything. It's from their top down. It's all.
I understand.
Kind of. Liverpool are no better because they're owned by FSG than Man United will be if they're owned by Qatar.
What?
The club is no different. The club's done nothing. The fans have done nothing. This is all things of outside.
Okay,
of
but you're being very kind of. I understand what you're saying. You've made that point. But as a Manchester United fan, I'm surprised that you're not a little bit more perturbed by this, because whatever about Man City and Newcastle and PSG, kind of like not nothing clubs, right? They're big clubs in their own right, okay? But they're not winning titles. They're not the biggest club in the world. If I'm a Manchester United fan, which I'm absolutely not, but I'm surprised that I would be with Joe in terms of saying, like, this is a club that has built itself into being this massive club in the world. It's built through, like, Matt Busby and and everything that it meant to the people of Manchester and wider Britain and Ireland and further afield even then in the 90s and everything like that under Ferguson. It's an incredible history, and it's a real history. I remember after they won the Champions League in 2008, and I remember it was the 50th anniversary of Munich, and Bobby Charlton was giving out the medals, and I remember, like, I'd wanted Chelsea to win that night just as a natural inbuilt thing as someone that doesn't want United to win, and then but like in that moment being delighted that United won, because it was saying that's a real club.
But what's the point of that?
Gone.
It's not gone. It's not gone. Of course it's not.
But are you not, like, annoyed as a United fan has been taken away from you by a Petrus thing?
What does being annoyed do? It does absolutely nothing. There's no point. We can be realistic about it. There's no point being. I wouldn't say.
Nothing will ever stop if people.
Nothing's stopping the other way.
Well, of course it could. You don't think
what's stopping the other way?
The Super League stopped by fans being annoyed.
Super League's not God. Like, it's not stopped. It's just changed around. We're in the Super League. Qatar are coming in to buy Man United now. That's the Super League.
If you're not angry about it, I get that point.
But there's no point being angry.
There is a point.
Can you not be
Why?
Can you not be
point?
I just said it could be stopped by fans.
Okay,
No, it can't.
Okay, but that's anger's a personality issue.
Just
Would you not
for a
be
quick-
calmly grimmed out about it?
He's angry right now.
Quick point. It can't be stopped by fans.
making
The fans
angry.
have tried to get rid of the Glazers
Why
for
aren't
how
Qatar?
long?
Like,
The fans have tried to get rid of Glazers for how long?
The power bit this slipped away once
They
the
didn't know what
Rocket
they had.
Gibraltar issue came up. Once Manchester went out,
nonsense.
once Manchester went into the Glazers' hands and into primarily private ownership, the clubs can do very little. The fans of the club can do very little about who the Glazers sell to.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the Glazers are going to look for £6 billion, and the Qatari money is just as good to them.
But they could stop it, but they don't want to. And here's the thing:
Who doesn't want to?
Well, we'll see. We'll see how much opposition there is to this if it actually comes true. I think a few people will talk for a few weeks about how this is a bad thing, and then it'll be the thing will come. We'll defend it. Why not? Why us and not them? This is the world we live in for a penny, in for a pound.
I doubt there's any perfect owners, because to be a billionaire in this world, generally, you've crossed a few lines and indulged in some gymnastics of various sorts. But would you not think it would be kind of a cool thing if there were marches in Manchester when this sale was going through and the fans saying, no, there has to be certain lines.
But my point on this is, right, and this is the one thing that all these other clubs that we're talking about didn't have. Man United are already beyond the realm where fans, and we'll take the fans that are, if you go globally, are so far beyond what is in Manchester, say. So you're talking about, like, it's such a bigger thing than what's in Manchester. And that's not my thing, and I don't want to for a second to come across as if I'd be fine with this. But it's just the reality of it, and there's no point in kind of going, it's now the onus is on Man United fans to sort it, the way it was the onus is on whoever else countries during the World Cup, the onus is on Newcastle fans. Like, that's just passing the buck till the next one's on, and then they'll come for Aston Villa and it'll be the same thing.
But this is the start of the process, is my point. Is like, at the start, surely at least you can voice your opposition to it and say, I don't want this to happen. That's at the very least, right? And then it happens, and then you deal with it, and then you come to that point.
It's too late then.
Where you're... What do you mean it's too late?
Once it happens, it's too late.
But that's what I mean. But if you said it's not going to do anything anyway, that's at the point that you come to the acceptance form of grief, or whatever it is, acceptance stage of grief.
I just don't think. I think it's fanciful to say that fans can stop this if they were to so inclined.
They should have a crack at it, though.
But like, they've had a crack at trying to get rid of the Glazers. It's done nothing. Like, it's not done a thing. You know what I mean?
And it might be easier to get rid of prospective bidders.
I don't think so.
Then
maybe not. Look, money will win, I'm sure.
Yeah, I really don't think so.
We're kind of out of time. We'll come back to that whole thing. I'd be curious to see. I mean, I'll be grimmed out if the comment section is full of Man United fans saying, "Get us Qatar ASAP."
I think it depends where they're. I think it will vary massively where they're from, Joe.
Maybe. So, quick final few texts. Because of the world he lives in, he would know how much a comment like that would hurt Gerrard. Getting slagged by social media guys is one thing, but not your peers. Low blow, says somebody. And maybe Pep was preempting a pylon from the Stevie G loving England journos. We know how they would react to the greatest midfielder of all time being criticised. I'm a 40-year-old woman. I drink very little. I love going out, love the crack. I'm not in a hurry home when we go out, but I regularly feel very awkward about not drinking. It's baffling how many people comment on it. I usually just hold a drink to save the hassle. Oh my God, well that's a grim thought, isn't it?
I've heard of someone, Joe, who on their social media, they don't drink, but they'll hold a drink so they're not questioned as to why they're in a group of people without drinking.
Yeah.
Again, like, to me it seems mad, but they obviously feel that has to be done.
This is the move of pregnant women pre-12 weeks territory, you know. Imagine if the GAA player played soccer or rugby debates are tedious. Name one GAA player that turned down a professional contract from an English club or professional contract in rugby to play GAA. The grand total is 0. None of them good enough. If they were, they'd be at Leinster or in England, says Hugh. Well, obviously, they're not getting offered contracts in their 20s, Hugh. The point is, if physically gifted types like Aidan O'Shea, instead of playing rugby from the age of 5, or instead of playing GAA from the age of 5, had perhaps pursued rugby, there's a fair chance he would have had the profile to get a rugby contract at Connacht. Obviously, at 21, switching over, not possible. It's ludicrous to suggest there are not some of the best athletes in the country playing GAA, I would suggest. A book recommendation on all the drink talk is A Good Drinker by Adrian Childs. Oh, yeah. Talks about his drinking life in sport and BBC. Spoke to Roy Keane as part of it, and Keane gave his reasons for giving up the drink. Love the show, keep it going, says Shane. I would burn my Cantona shirt. I would be outraged, says Chris in Wexford. That's what we want, burn the shirts. Lads, what's the current?
You know what I mean?
What's the current status surrounding Joe's brick phone? We don't have time for this, surely.
Loads of
We're
time.
way
Where's
over
the
time.
phone? Where's the phone?
Back to it next week.
Someone said we made a big deal of it, that we spent the whole show on it, and that it was summarily dismissed at the start of this.
Column in Westmeath, I will address that next week. There has been a life-changing circumstance. We're out of time.
The clickbait way to end the show.
What would you like to say? What would you like to say about the thread that will envelop this YouTube video now? Jeez, do Mick and Arthur not like each other? The thing is, they love each other. Only two people who love each other could argue like that.
I did have to check myself in the middle that we are on radio. Like, it did a feeling. It's like
It was nonsense that really hurt, I have to say, because I felt like we were having a fine debate, and then Arthur made it personal.
See, only people who are secure in their relationship could argue this way. That's what's so lovely about it. That was a slight tangent. You can
didn't work, by the way, on that. It's your blogging out, Joe.
Oh yeah, the visuals didn't work. Slight tangent. Do we podcast this, by the way?
Oh, big time,
Yeah,
big time.
of course.
Or do we podcast it?
You can
OTB
find it on.
Daily, OTB Daily.
OTB Daily.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
I'm sure if you search
Maybe it's
slight,
off the ball daily.
I'm sure if you search a slight tangent, it will
you're
come
right.
up. Look at you two agreeing each other again. Will, thank you. Mick, thank you. Arthur, thank you. Football show on the